like a wall around her. Ethiopia and Egypt. Like a wall around her. Ethiopia and Egypt.
Say this real quick. We would have to read that source all over again because OTK did that no justice.
Soon I heard him apologize. They president over there say he apologized for selling us for fucking umbrellas. Nigga, you crazy as hell.
I'm not the niggas you been dealing with, Bubba.
All right, early world maps in China. So for encapsulating a world view, there is nothing quite like a world map. As with other forms of cartography, Mapamundi, whether medieval or modern, Islamic, Asian, or Western, tell us about values and attitudes, aims and aspirations, hopes and fears, but they express them on a particularly grand, indeed global scale, to the extent that such productions in any given society share affinities across space and time. They reveal significant features of that culture's self-image and, of course, its conceptions of the other. And to the degree that they do not, they suggest changes, ruptures, tensions, and conflicts within the larger cultural system. With these considerations in mind, Richard J. Smith of Rice University, in his paper entitled Mapping China's World, Cultural Cartography in Late Imperial Times, 1996, and Laura Hostetler in her book King Colonial Enterprise, Ethnography and Cartography in Early Modern China, 2001, examined the evolution of Chinese maps of the world during late imperial times, from the 12th to the 20th centuries, focusing on two basic questions. How did changing conceptions of the world shape the contours of Chinese cartography? And how did changing, as well as enduring cartographic practices, affect Chinese conceptions of the world? Significant methodological and practical problems attend such questions. In the first place, it is often difficult to determine where a map of China ends and a map of the world begins. Large-scale cartographic representations of space in late imperial Chinese times present us with a number of overlapping political, cultural, and geographic images, identified either by dynastic names, Song, Yuan, Ming, and Qing, or by more enduring but still fluid designations such as Central Cultural Fluorescence, Zhonghua, the spiritual region, Shenzhou or Shenzhou, the 9 regions, Juzhou, however you say this, the Central Kingdom, Zhongguo, the Central Land, Zhongtu, and all under heaven, Tianjia, something like that. You know, this is reminding me of the Norse people's conception of the world. So let me bring this up. Norse conception of the world, like Jotunheim. Jotunheim's one of them. Helheim's another one. So Jotunheim is one of the 9 realms in Norse mythology. It is the home of the giants or the Jotnar, who are fearsome and often must be confronted by heroic gods such as Thor. So, you know, I might have to do a comparative analysis between the Nordic mythology and then the Chinese conception of the world, if there's any similarities or differences. make some connections. Significant methodological. Okay, I read that part. Their relationship, as well as the distinction between these time honored concepts, is by no means always clear in traditional Chinese maps. In examining China's view of the world, Arakawa Masahuru, it's a tongue twister, Arakawa Masahuru from Osaka University in China, from Osaka University and China's view of the world, examined how the idea of Qianjia plays a key role. This idea generally refers to the world as a whole. It is important to understand what the idea specifically signified. The word Qianjia has been used in two different ways. Firstly, it can represent the whole globe. In this all-embracive usage, Qianjia stretches out beyond China, and the one who rules it is the Lord of the world. Alternatively, it is confined to the geographical China. Consequently, its extension is limited to the area that actually stood under the rule of the Chinese dynasties. Most Chinese historical sources, in particular those since the time of the late former Han, 202 BCE to 8 CE, and the early later Han, 25 CE to 220 CE, use the word in the latter meaning. In pre-modern China, Qianjia often signified the state. Meanwhile, non-Han countries and peoples around China were seen as not belonging to Qianjia, and the inhabitants were called barbarians. The Chinese differentiated this area depending on the distance from China. One, the neighboring regions to which the Chinese rule extended, and two, the remote regions which stood completely outside Chinese influence. So it looks like with their maps, they always put China in the center. So I'm gonna have to look into that. Maybe learn how to read, speak some Mandarin or whatever the form of Chinese was it 700 years ago, 600 years ago? At times, in particular, when the territory of the dynasty expanded dramatically, as under the Han, the Tang or the Qing dynasties, Qianjia was taken to include the neighboring regions. Still, the idea of Qianjia was related to the sovereignty of the emperor. It delimited the area that he effectively governed by means of the central administration, as well as the census, registration, and the map in the provinces and counties. There were two views about what relation Tianxia had with the vast surrounding area, including the neighboring and the remote regions. One regarded the dynasty's capital, in which the emperor resided, as center of the whole world. The other, which equally existed through the ages, saw the center in the Kunlun Mountains to the west of China and positioned Tianxia to their southeast. The former perspective is often seen as typifying Chinese perspectives on the world. But it is interesting to note that there was also a competing relativistic paradigm. China conceived of itself as a place where a virtuous person who had received the mandate of heaven ruled all under heaven, Tianxia, and viewing its own sphere of rule as a center of the world. It's called the Zhonggua. Further, it espoused civilized/barbarian thought, looking upon the region surrounding this Zhonggua, or China, as the world of barbarian peoples, and considering itself to be in a position to bring civilization to the culturally backward world of barbarian peoples. The traditional tributary relations between Zhonggua and the surroundings were formed naturally on the basis of the Chinese dichotomic view of the world. This understanding is in itself basically not mistaken. But in order to gain an accurate grasp of China's perception of the world, it is necessary to elaborate on this in a little more detail. In China, the word Qianxia, or all under heaven, is used to refer to the world. It is frequently used in an already well-established meaning during the Warring States period, 403 BCE to 221 BCE. Before the start of the Common Era, and thereafter it continued to be used throughout successive dynasties right down to the end of the Qing Dynasty, which lasted from 1644 to 1911. In the early 20th century, in order to consider how China has historically viewed the world, it is first of all necessary to have an accurate understanding of the world as denoted by this term Tianxia. Broadly speaking, as mentioned above, there have until now been two different interpretations of the word Tianxia. All right, they're dragging this out, but they're breaking it down bit by bit by bit by bit. And this article is 125 pages. I'm on page 2. So, and then it seems like this topic is so expansive. I got a book on it for free, by the way. Well, through an opportunity, let's say that. 800 pages. 800-page book about Chinese, I don't want to say folklore, but epics, epic tales. So I'm going to learn about Imperial China, history of China. I might have to check out the Assassin's Creed game, the one that's over there. I think it's in Japan. I might have to go back and watch Mulan again, pick up some more information. So let's break down this Tianxia word. Broadly speaking, as mentioned above, there have until now been two different interpretations of the word Tianxia. One interpretation considers Tianxia to refer to the world extending beyond the borders of China. This was first pointed out by Tazaki Masayoshi in 1926, the first person to undertake a systematic examination of the notion of Tianxia. He argued that Tianxia signified the whole world and referred to limitless land. You know what? I got another idea. I think I should go to the museum and just chill in the East Asian portion of it. Because I know most people, when they go to a museum, they're checking out like ancient Africa, like Egypt, and then like Europe, maybe Greece, Rome, but like looking at the pharaohs and stuff, that's what most people want to see. But I'm gonna have to chill in the Asian section, East Asia. One second, let me see if I can pull up a video for a slight break that could tell us about history of Imperial China. See if I can find a short video. There's a 7-minute video. Almost 3 million views. Maybe I'll check it out. No, they definitely gonna like my channel. I ain't checking that out. Never mind. History summarized ancient China. This one looks good. Share this with the audio.
Honestly, pretty accurate. The story of China is a very long, often winding, and all too frequently shattered enterprise, but it is damn interesting. So, to find out what's causing this 3,000-year-long dance of unifying and fragmenting, let's do some history. To start, every civilization needs water in some form or another.
Okay, so I don't know if I exactly like this form of storytelling and history that he's doing. You know, it's a little bit too cartoony for me, but it is what it is.
Egypt has the Nile, Mesopotamia has the Tigris and the Euphrates, and China has the Yellow River. The earliest records of centralized civilization in China point to the Yellow River Basin as the cradle of that civilization. But written records only tell part of the story, and in China especially, there's a pretty shocking gap between what our sources tell us and what we've found archaeologically in the past century all across the country.
So here we go. We got archaeology versus, tales. What is more accurate? What is the truth?
For instance, the Yangtze River to the south was once regarded as a later development during the Chinese Bronze Age, but nope, there was all kinds of separate stuff going on down there before we ever see significant textual evidence for it. So back to the Yellow River. From what we know, civilization got properly going during the reign of the 5 semi-divine and almost certainly legendary emperors. The last one, Emperor Yu, founded the also likely mythical Xia dynasty in the 22nd century BC. And real quick on the subject of
22nd century BC. They go back. Don't make me get on my out of Asia theory, man.
names, despite 2 Chinese-speaking friends very generously coaching my pronunciation, I am still sure to fail, so blanket apology. Skipping ahead to sturdier footing, we have the definitely real Shang dynasty, who ruled from the Yellow River Basin during the Chinese Bronze Age. But even here, we found boatloads of evidence for distinct cultures with regionally unique bronze work, implying fairly independent societies across China. There's also a decent chance that the Shang and later Zhou dynasties overlapped. I recognize that this is all a bit too hazy, but I hope that you can see why this might be a very contentious issue, and we're still discovering new things all the time. So even more so than usual, general disclaimer that academics are currently spilling rivers of ink debating some of what I'll cover in this series.
Yep, because they don't know. That's the short of it. They're still trying to figure out what's true. There's nothing that's been conclusive.
And speaking of writing things, our first glimpse of the written Chinese language comes from the Shang Bronze Age, where oracles inscribed turtle shells and bones with predictions before hucking them into a fire to see how they cracked and which statements were verified. The writing, though obviously super old, is still recognizably Chinese, and the quality implies that the script had been around even before that. Plus, the hefty collection of turtle shells we've dug up indicates that this was a regular, if not daily, procedure. And this tells us 2 important things. For one, the Shang rulers believed themselves to have an in with the gods, and 2, while artwork and bronze work weren't unique to the Shang, writing at this level of sophistication...
every society, humans believing in a higher power and believing that they have contact with that higher power.
Likely was. This sets the stage for an entire history of power lying with those who have divine favor and those who can most effectively employ writing to convey that. Our written sources tell us that the last Shang emperor became tyrannical, and King Wu overthrew him to found the Zhou dynasty, which went on to rule for another 800 years. And this brings us to one of the most central concepts in Chinese history, the mandate of heaven. The basic idea is that if you rule justly, heaven will smile upon you and grant you dominion over China. But if you behave wickedly, as the last Shang emperor did, you forfeited your power, and someone more noble than you is going to claim it. So
look at that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into this. This whole philosophy.
just watch out for that happening all the time for the next 3,000 years. Anyway, the Zhou dynasty starts to consolidate our mental image of classical China, with unique knife and spade coinage, walls, bureaucratic government, and a lot of soon-to-be very famous literature. Unfortunately for the Zhou, their strong start wouldn't last forever, and China's longest dynasty would spend half a millennium fending off assailants from all sides after caving in on itself in the 770s BC. So I mean, yeah, the Zhou were around for another 500 years, but come on, look at it. Barely even exists, it's tiny. The split between the strong and cohesive Western Zhou and the tiny East.
So I don't even need to harp on damn, where am I at? Can't even see myself. Let's see. There we go. I don't even want to harp too much on the history right now because I just got a new idea. I don't want to say I'm gonna stick to one, but I'm gonna do both. On one end, I'm gonna go into the tales in the world view, and then on the other end, I'll learn the history. But right now I'm like crossing 2 paths, and I'd rather just break it up, split it into 2, do a live about the history, do a live about the philosophy. So yeah, I'm gonna dive into this because I feel like China is slept on. Like they got a lot of like history and knowledge that at least, classically speaking, that we could actually embrace and benefit from, especially if we can't solve our own problems. So I got to look into their culture a little bit more, see what they teach. I think I got an idea. And growing up, I always knew that, like, you know, East Asian philosophies always had a lot of respect. But yeah, I'll be back with a part 2. I'm gonna keep this one short. That's what it is.